Hey, chiropractors, welcome to Modern Chiropractic Mastery with your host, Dr. Kevin Christie, where we discuss the latest in marketing, business, and professional growth with some of the leading experts in the industry. Welcome to another episode of Modern Chiropractic Mastery. This is your host, Dr. Kevin Christie, and today bringing you a little bit of a different episode. This is kind of like a public service announcement episode, and I've got Dr. Curt Kippenberger joining me, not as a guest that I'm going to be interviewing, but more as a guest to dialogue with on this particular topic of the 30 and 60 minute DC. That's utilizing time as the component as how they're trying to separate themselves, and we talk a lot about the positives on the introduction. So I don't. This isn't a bash fest. It's more of just really trying to dive into all the nuances of it, and that was the angle we're coming at it from, because I do think the 30 and 60 minute DC is doing good things, but I think there's some concerns to address. And in the conversation, we have a wide-ranging conversation around it. But I just want to, set a little more context in this introduction. And, I want chiropractors to provide great care, but I also want them to thrive. I want them to grow. I want them to be able to delegate. I want them to be able to have a team around them. Part of why I love, say, the clinic gym hybrid model, the essence of that. Part of why I love motion palpation and active release technique, certain things, and the concept of maximizing your license. But I'm just, I want to make sure that we have all the chips on the table and understand how to become a great chiropractor clinically, but also how to have a great life around that and preventing burnout. And that's some of the things that we talk about. And I do think there's a solution, right? I think some of the options for the 30 and 60 minute DC, if you're at 30 minutes, we've had episodes before, and we've talked about it. And one of the things we coach our clients on is getting from 30 to 20. So instead of seeing 2 an hour, you can see 3 at the price point you're at, or even raising the price point a little bit. And that can sometimes help out with that hourly capacity. If you're going to be this, if you want your patients in there for the 60 minutes, I really would consider a path and start the path now to where you're delegating some of that and you're not specifically spending 60 minutes, or, consider the clinic gym hybrid. And we talk about why in this episode. So I'm just going to leave it kind of there as far as the paths that we've worked with chiropractors or seen chiropractors do to be able to do this model, but do it effectively and thrive over the years. And that's something that to consider. Because, if you're going to spend 60 minutes as the doctor with that patient, you have to figure out that hourly capacity that we talk about in this episode, and earning a certain amount per hour. And really there is a way of doing that. We've had, and I've talked about it before, we've had Dr. James Spencer, and we mentioned a few other chiropractors in this particular episode that have done that and charge quite a bit. But we, in this episode, talk about some of the other sides of what that looks like and how that can be very challenging. And so if you are going that route, we have some good information in this episode to help you out there. And one of the things I want you to ponder as you listen to this too is if you are going that route of charging a lot, we kind of banged on the other side of the profession for the huge care plans, 6 months of care, $5,000. We've banged on them for many years for that, and trying to find a middle ground of, I love when doctors can charge a premium. I really do. And so I don't want it to come across like that. But there is a sweet spot where you're charging a premium, but it's still reasonable and affordable for a good percentage of the patients that you can then have enough patients to make it work, and a question I have on that, and we don't necessarily dissect this part out, but we do dissect other aspects of if a patient is paying a lot of money, what happens if they don't get the results? What happens if they don't get better? If they dished out $3, $4, $5, $6, $7,000 for a month's care or so, what happens when they don't get better. And so just, you know, again, we all have to deal with the patients not getting better. I had Mark King on the episode back, I think in December of 2023 of addressing that. So we all have to face that. So it's just something that you'll have to also consider as well when there's been an outlay of money like that, and if they don't get the results with it. And so we dive in again. I This conversation is really meant to just provide all of the angles and nuances of the 30 and 60-minute chiropractor and what to look at. Know what you're getting into if you do it. Go full steam ahead if you've checked all the boxes and you're comfortable with it, but just have all the facts, and also know there are alternatives and solutions. If when you do all your research on that, it isn't something that you want to go down for the next 10, 15, 20, 25, 30 years, because that's ultimately what the decision-making process has to be, is you have to have a path, not only for now, but for the rest of your career, and build the practice correctly out of the gates. Because I do get a lot of chiropractors that come to me and they're my age and they didn't build it the way they wanted to, and they kind of realize it now, and so we have to reverse engineer it, and it's always a little bit harder, but definitely doable. And so let's do it the right way from the beginning. And here are just some of the nuances of the 30 and 60-minute DC. And my guest my co-host on this one is Dr. Curt Kippenberger. All right. Thanks for joining me, Curt. I appreciate your sounding board effect in my day-to-day life and on today's episode as we dive into the 30-minute and 60-minute DC. How are things in your end?
Really great. We are fresh off of our Q2 team training, even though it came a little late. That's just how it worked. And actually, some of the topics I think that we'll hit today are something we addressed last Friday. And I think, yeah, I'm just excited to continue to talk about the models that you can practice within as an evidence-informed DC.
I've had some interviews recently. Some of them will come out after this, but it's been with Chris Chippendale, Tony Katakis, Bobby Maybe, Josh Satterley. Some of those haven't come out yet, as this will come out, but we've had a lot of good conversations on, you know, the evidence-based, evidence-informed side of the profession. So let's put the other side of the profession away. But there's definitely becoming a diverse crowd within our evidence-based chiropractic model. And the other, you know, even I reference back a good interview I had with Dr. Alan Sokoloff. He's been someone that's been a sports chiropractor for many, many years now. And in that episode, him and I talked about kind of this three phases of the sports chiropractor, right? Like he was phase one, you know, someone like him, someone like Thomas Hyde, a lot of really good guys doing things that were kind of at the frontier of sports chiropractic back then. And then I kind of put myself into that tier two. I came in 05 and I had the ARTs and the Grassons and the TPIs. But I still was very heavy on palpation and manipulation. And then there's been this phase three sports chiropractor that's doing different things. And some of that is a time component, right? And that's kind of what we're going to talk a little bit about today, is the chiropractor that is spending 30 to or 60 minutes with patients with follow-up visits. So let's put the new patient visit aside, but just each visit is 30 and or 60. And I want to start out by talking about the good of it, because this episode is not going to be us, you know, saying like, oh, this is bad care. It's, you know, it's great care. Like there's a lot of positives to it, right? There's great leadership for that patient. It's just the same way as, like, I think when people hire personal trainers, it's phenomenal, obviously, given if the personal trainer is actually good. But yeah, I think there's a lot of positives that a chiropractor is doing when they are having a time component, right? I'm not a huge fan of making time the thing, right? Like I like it to be a results economy versus a time economy. And that's kind of the first thing I want to touch on after we do dive into the good of it. But yeah, what are some of your thoughts on the positives of the 30 to 60 minute DC?
Yeah, I love your intro on the elegance of very patient-centered care. And
Hmm.
I think so many of our profession and physical therapists truly believe that to have patient-centered care, it has to become as a direct delivery from that person. And there are some very, very good things about having the continuity of care between one person only versus having a team of experts surrounding you. But I also think there's some really great things about having a team behind you too, and we can get into that in our next little segue. But knowing the patient by name, knowing their family, their dog's name, what they do exercise well, what they don't
Hmm.
exercise well. Yeah, I think all of that could be wrapped in some to say if you're spending 30 to 60 minutes and you don't know those things about them, then you're
Hmm.
doing something vastly wrong, right?
Hmm.
Um, but I do think there are lots of limitations too. And I think the big thing is it's a very hard business to scale, right? You
Hmm.
can only see
Yeah.
X amount of people a day.
Yeah, and I think that's something to touch on because there is that component. Business is a part of what we do. I know the term scaling gets thrown around a lot, but if you cannot make a thriving business out of it, and if there's not a product market fit, it becomes a really big struggle. And I think that hourly capacity is important. I've harped on that a lot. Like what's the hourly capacity that you have? And there's two components of this that one of them I've talked a lot about. One I've kind of just forgot to talk about or didn't realize I wasn't talking about it. But the hourly capacity would be is okay, if you can see, let's take the chiropractor that can see four people in 1 hour. And let's say your office visit average is $80. Okay. That's four times 80. That is now a $320 hourly capacity that you have. That and above, like those types of numbers, 300, 400, that's where you're going to have margin. That's when you have profit margin. That's when you're going to have enough meat on the bone to where you can pay yourself a professional wage, right? And you can hire, you can get out of that vicious cycle of being lacking margin, lacking profit margin, because what we do see in the 30 to 60 minute DC a lot of times is let's say two patients an hour chart getting let's even say $90 from that. That's $180. That's typically not going to leave most chiropractors enough money to pay themselves a six-figure pay and then obviously start hiring folks, and that's a concern. But there's a second aspect to the hourly capacity is okay, it's one is what's your hourly capacity? Is it good? Yes. Let's say it's $400 an hour. But then are you actually filling up your schedule? Or do you have so many holes in your schedule you're not getting enough volume in the practice? So yeah, you could make 400 an hour, but you're just not growing your business to do that. So you don't actually have enough revenue coming in to sustain that business, and that's where we see a lot of people run into issues with this hourly capacity aspect.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Mark King said something at a seminar years ago. I was retaking lower quarter dynamic, and whatever your time block, whether that's 10 minutes or 20 minutes, or just assign your value.
Mhm.
What can you do to change your patient's life in that time frame? And that resonated so well because even though that might be your piece of the puzzle, if you have high level extenders that are also helping you multiply that, you do have a 30-minute or maybe even a 60-minute model. They
Mhm.
might just be seeing other people. And one of the things that I forgot to circle back about, a few of the really great aspects of spending time is it really respects some of the principles of the functional movement systems, resetting joints, reinforcing with good healthy habits, and retraining and reloading. And so whether you're the 30 to 60-minute chiro or you're the 20-minute, just having those strategies in place to make sure that you're delivering high quality evidence informed care, or having resources outside of your clinic that will provide those things that you can't, or maybe aren't able to yet provide for your patients.
Yeah, definitely. And obviously, just for clarity's sake, is we're when we say the 30-minute to 60-minute DC, this is the DC that's spending all the time with that patient, not delegating. And we'll get to the delegation side of things soon, but doing everything essentially. And I think clinical efficiency is something that pops up, and we've seen this. And I want to reference a great book, and I think it's really a good concept for younger DCs in particular. You don't have to go out and read the whole book. You can if you want to. It's a thick read, but it's called Thinking Slow and Fast by Daniel Kahneman. And in that book, he talks a lot about system one and system two thinking. And system one thinking is essentially automatic thinking. What's two plus two for brain? No sweat, no calories burned. System two is when you really have to think. What's 25 times 36, right? You could probably figure it out, but you're gonna have to put that thinking cap on and really work through that. And when you're in clinical care, early on, you're really burning through that system two thinking more than say you and I are, because we've been doing it for quite a long time. I would say that a lot of my patients that come in through a day, it's just system one thinking, and then then the hard case comes in, and I turn on system two. I hope it's not 5:30 p.m. I have to turn on the system two thinking, but it's something to recognize. And as I usually tell that to young chiropractors, it makes sense to them, and it makes them feel a little bit better that it's going to get better. Like they're not going to be burned out like they are. They're going to get more clinically efficient. It's not going to take them as much time. And I think a great podcast episode to reference for our audience, if they haven't already, is the episode I did with Brett Winchester on clinical efficiency, and even things he talked about on there where there is a such thing as over treating, right? So there's a chance if you're not careful and you're spending too much time with a patient, you might be over treating them. And he talks about in that episode too, where the value of a treatment plan is that you're going to progress them through the treatment plan. You don't have to throw the kitchen sink at them every visit. You're going to progress them and regress them, and you're going to learn them over a little bit of time, and you're going to have that, and you're going to get more efficient. And I think that's something that a lot of the younger DCs that are feeling like they need 30 minutes with a patient or need 60 can take some solace in that it's going to get better. If you get more efficient, you'll continue to sharpen that saw, and it'll be a lot easier for you, and you won't be burning through that system two thinking all the time.
Right. And I think Brett has so many good knowledge bombs that he drops in his seminars and through the podcast with the Gestalt. And, one of them is his next treatment will be his best treatment. So that clinical acumen that you gain each visit in, each visit out, you're just going to be
Mhm.
that much more efficient. And when we were in Jupiter earlier this year for our mastermind, he introduced the phrase that I hadn't heard before. I've heard him say it in different ways, but situational IQ, and
Mhm.
that situational IQ grows every single time. And even though, in the functional movement systems, we say never take shortcuts, sometimes you do earn your right to a shortcut because you've seen it 10,000 times.
Yeah, that was a great one. He had a lot of great. That was a great just 4 hour presentation he gave our group was amazing to hear him on the business side of things, and then just the thinking he goes through, not just the clinical, which is good. And I think I reference him a lot because he's someone we put up on the hierarchy of clinical skills, and obviously he's clinically minded, but he also runs a very efficient business that does well, and he's able to put a great team around him, which allows him to do other things and really maximize what he does do in the clinic, which is important. I think that's what I want for chiropractors. Let's take a break from today's episode and announce our first sponsor. This is going to be Propel Marketing and Design. I've known Darcy Sullivan for years. We've worked hand in hand on my websites. I don't trust anybody else to do the search engine optimization. She does a great job. There's so much to it. A lot of the lingo and the words are beyond my comprehension, but it's just amazing work that she does. And if you're really going to get results with Google, you have to make sure your website is SEO optimized. And I really don't want you doing it yourself as a chiropractor. So you just have to have this type of stuff done. And if you're looking to get more organic online traffic that pulls in new patients, Propel Marketing and Design is currently offering chiropractors who listen to this podcast a free SEO website review.
The free review will help you uncover methods that will improve your website and boost your search engine visibility. Head over to propelyourcompany.com/chiropractor and schedule your free SEO website review. You won't regret it. She gets great results. Your website needs this. Your search results need this. Head on over there to propelyourcompany.com/chiropractor to get your free SEO website review.
One of the current concerns I have is this is still a fairly new thing, right? Where the DC is spending a lot of time with the patient outside of some outliers, right? Yeah, Craig Liebenson's been doing that for a long time. I've gotten to know over the years people that have done it on a scale that's been really cool, like Troy Van Beesen, obviously with professional sports. So I think sometimes we see them doing that and it looks great. It is amazing, but it's a different business model, right? Like I can tell you what Troy's running is a different business model than a private practice when he's working with the number one golfer in the world. Or on another podcast I'll reference that I had was Dr. James Spencer, who's about 40 minutes away from me here, and I've known him since he graduated. And in that episode, I think he said he charges $500 an hour. But and I'm gonna have you speak to this part of it here in a second. If you listen to that episode, you hear the evolution where he had to really get good at what he was doing from a clinical standpoint, a rehab standpoint. He's dry needling and he does rehab and does a lot of different things, but he didn't start out charging that. Like he built up a reputation over 10 plus years, and it went from maybe, I don't know, $80 a session to 100 to 120 to 200 to 250 to 500, like wherever it went. But it was a slow build of a extremely good positioning and expertise and a skill set that he had to be able to charge the high fee for that. And so I think I want to talk about that a little bit right now is the clinical chops to be able to charge a high fee, and then we can talk about charging a high fee.
Right. You mentioned some of those Mount Rushmore chiropractors like Brett and Troy and these guys, and Greg Rose is one of mine. And
Mm-hmm.
the very first SFMA seminar that I took with him, he told us his story. He didn't own TPI from day one. He did not invent SFMA with Gray on day one. It was an evolution of his practice model. And of course, Greg, coming from an engineering background originally, he was really able to compartmentalize some of these things. And maybe he got there faster than your average, but he still had to put his reps in, and he had some great successes and he had even greater failures. And he habit stacked all of that to build the dynasty that is now TPI and SFMA within the functional movement systems. But when we graduate, and even in our first few years of practice, we're so low value and low expert because we don't have the case management. We don't have that situational IQ that we were just talking about with Brett. And it's really, really hard to sell that to the public. It's hard to
Mm-hmm.
sell that to yourself in the mirror, to be honest with you. I mean, so
Mm-hmm.
many coaching clients that we have in MCM, breaking them out of that poverty complex is so hard, right? They come out of school with 250K in debt. If they went and opened their own practice, they might have another 50 to 150 on top of that. It seems like an insurmountable mountain. And you can't take the elevator success on that. You have to grind it out step by step at a time. There's just no fast pace to get there.
Yeah, it's true. And I think, it's, I kind of was on a Facebook thread. I forget, I think it might have been in Bobby's group in FTCA, which always has just really good threads in there. And one of them was about this, about sales and about costs for patients and things of that nature. And I just talked about, what's tricky about the 60-minute DC or even a 30-minute DC is that idea of the product market fit. And there's a couple of things about that. Is one is that as a chiropractor, the community, the people in your town, they do put you into a certain category of what they expect. Like the general public thinks of chiropractic and they think of a certain thing. they may be a little bit more astute and they do think, oh, well, the chiropractor is going to help out with maybe with some soft tissue as well, maybe some rehab, but they don't necessarily think of spending an hour each time they go in with a chiropractor and what that looks like. Now, I'm not saying don't do that. And what I do think can happen is actually really good marketing can overcome some of that, which is really cool. And we see some folks do that. And I love good marketing, and that's what's so important about good marketing is that you can educate the community and you can overcome a product market mismatch like that. And you can get them into the door. But then the second product market mismatch happens, and that is the compensation model that is chiropractic. Whether, obviously on one side of the spectrum, you're going to have insurance-based model. Insurance model is just not going to cover it, right? You'd be very hard pressed to find an insurance model that's going to compensate appropriately for the time you have to put in with that patient. So that's out the window. And so then you really have to be on the cash base aspect. And then whenever you're talking about a product market fit, it has to be, multiple things, but one of those is what the expected value is of the service that they're going to get and the value. And you kind of referenced a little bit, but I'm going to take a step back before we go further into that second part of the product market fit for the cash paying patient. But there's the XY axis of positioning we talk a lot about, which is a Seth Godin thing I learned years ago. And basically you got your X and your Y axis, and the upper right quadrant is going to be your high expert, let's call it high value. All right. And so let me rephrase that a little bit. Let's say your vertical axis is going to be on the top is going to be is just world class expert. On the bottom is non-expert, and then on the horizontal axis on the left side is going to be affordable, cheap, right? And on the other side is going to be high value. And what ends up happening is when you're young, and even if you're great, even if you're better than most, in the eyes of the beholder, you have not built up that reputation you're talking about yet. And so just naturally, you fall on the non-expert side of that axis. And what happens is if you're on that side of it and you're in the non-expert because you just haven't had the years under your belt, or you haven't broken into the market share of your community yet, not enough people know about you, whatever, not enough referrals yet, it takes time. That value switches to too expensive, right? So if that person goes and sees Greg Rose, they see the value in paying the money. If they go and see the DC that's a few years out, or frankly, it could be 20 years out, but hasn't done enough to establish expertise, which many chiropractors 20 years out still have not done. That's going to flip from high value to too expensive, right? And that's where a part of the product market mismatch happens when a younger DC that has not built up the expertise in positioning in the eyes of the beholder, which is your community, when that's happened, it's a product market mismatch. And so what you have to do, because like I'm a big proponent of like, you got to get that hourly capacity up. It's like, yeah, you're worth $400 an hour. You're worth $350 an hour. You're worth $500 an hour. Fuck, you're worth $1,000 an hour in my mind, right? You're worth it. Like I'm not saying you're not. You definitely are. But in the eyes of one patient, are you worth spending $350 or $500 on? And that's the tricky part. That's where the product market mismatch can happen. And then the only way you can really get over that, unless you've, again, built up the expertise over time and you become someone that's well sought after, which can happen, but let's assume you're not that at this point. The only way you can potentially get over that is if you get really good at hard sales, right? Hard sales is needed when you have a situation that you're not providing, it's not a perfect product market fit, and they're not compelled to just write the check, right? Like, Oh, it's $75 for this 10-minute visit. Boom, I'm in, right? They see the value potentially. Or you become Greg Rose or James Spencer or Troy Van Beesen or Brett Winchester. Yeah, I'll write that check. And that's what we see. And that's when we see we have to have the hard sales to make this work, because you better get to that hourly capacity of $400 or $300 or five or whatever it is. Like if you're in San Francisco, it's going to look different than Iowa, but you better get there. And that cash-based 30 to 60-minute DC is running into really only a couple options to make this work.
Right. Another thing, while we're on the theme of XY axes, in our last mastermind in Nashville, Vision Spark was talking about your brand versus culture XY axes. And so
Mm-hmm.
people like Hilton and Amex and Marriott, they don't have to do anything as far as marketing. They've got more patrons and they know what to do with. But again, like Hilton didn't start that way. Ritz-Carlton did not start that way. They started very, very singularly focused on
Mm-hmm.
each person that walked through the hotel. And they figured out a way to scale that, right? Like I
Mm-hmm.
remember we had an opportunity to stay at the Ritz years ago at a seminar at an incredibly discounted rate. And before I got to the front desk, they knew who we were. They knew our names. They knew stuff about us that I was borderline creeped out about. I was like, what kind of
Mm-hmm.
bug did you plant in me when you took my bags? But no, they're world class in every respect. They really want to serve their clientele at a high level. That way they can maintain that high value, high cost model too.
Yeah, I think it's important. It's all about the experience, right? So that's the customer experience, and then obviously we use the language, the patient experience. And I think when a patient comes into a busy practice, and there's a team, there's a really happy front desk person, and they're nice, and then there's the doctor, maybe two doctors, there's the CA, maybe preceptors, maybe massage therapists, whatever. And that team can provide a phenomenal experience. It goes a long way for sure. Now, not everybody can have a team right out of the gates, but you need to be building the foundation of a practice model that will allow you. Again, I think every chiropractor has to design their business to offer phenomenal care, offer a great patient experience, a path for you to make a professional living, and a path for you to make a professional living and pay team members well, and then ultimately hire an associate down the road. And I think one of the things people don't realize is how much money it takes a year in a clinic revenue to be able to really afford an associate, like to where you can actually, you know what, like I can actually afford this associate. I'm not trying to pigeonhole this into some shenanigans of compensation. Uh, and and it's not $200,000 a year clinic revenue. You know, that's why I wrote that blog on why 30,000 a month is so important. That's 360,000 a year. That's when you can start thinking about it, right? Even in some, depending on your situation, even at 350 a year, revenue might not get you that. But 500 gets you that, 400 gets you that, 450 probably gets you that, depending on how much you need to pay yourself, obviously. But you can have a delayed gratification a bit and hire an associate, and then obviously onboard that associate. They should be a profit center. This isn't volunteer work. This isn't, you're not, letting them just ride your coattails for nothing. Like you should obviously make profit off them, and then that you can pay yourself more on there. That's the law of scale. And
Mhm.
so it is important to build a model right out of the gates that is scalable, that can bring on associates and provide great care. Now, if you want your patients to come in and spend 30, like a lot of the patients come into my practice and they do spend 30 minutes in my practice. Some it's 10, some it's 15, some it's 30, depending on what they've got going on. They're in our clinic. They're getting that. They're just getting it from a team. And that's where I think you and I, work, coaching as many chiropractors as we have. That's where we're trying to reframe this for chiropractors, is that let's get this model correct. Let's make sure it's a product market fit. Let's make sure the patients are compelled when they come in, and then that
When they're in it, you don't have to have this like hard sales job to get them to commit to some kind of um, cost that it's going to be for them. What is a good number for that patient to pay per visit and a good amount of time and efficiency you provide for them and gets them really good results, right? And then maybe you have some really good ways, like we use, a system to get them their exercises. You can even check out Jay Greenstein's app, which has like the at-home exercise where you can actually monitor them doing. Like it's pretty cool what you can do. Like so, there's some things they can do at home to help with the long-term side of things. But what can we do to build a model that's long lasting?
Yeah, the kind of speaking on the hard sales, and you kind of skimmed over the insurance versus cash model. I think one of the things specifically within our mastermind group, but we've deployed this also to our MCM clients, is if you are in an insurance-based economy and it's not paying you to get you to that threshold of a good labor ratio, a good working ratio of production per hour, what cash-based add-ons can you do to complement your services and even fill some gaps? I know Shockwave was a really big topic at our last mastermind. And if you're having trouble with chronic tendinopathies and plantar fasciosis with your skill set that you have with your hands, it's very elegant to scale your practice with a modality like shockwave or
Mhm.
needling or radio frequency, whatever it is. Because again, if you're not in a time-based economy or an outcome-based economy,
Mm.
what can you do to get that patient to the finish line faster? That's how you're going to build value over time. And I think that kind of helps your scalability issues. It also goes back and talks about the hard sales. When we were doing our team training last week, that word came up. It's that dirty word that none of us in the evidence-based world like to talk about as
Mhm.
sales. But let's be frank. I sold Krista on me 26 years ago. You sold Laura on you, and we have to sell ourselves every day because let's face it, we married up, right? Um,
Yes, especially
but
you and me. Anybody has, but definitely you and me.
there might not be two better examples. Uh, with that though, if you can look a patient in the eye and you're using those monitoring systems like Jay's app or Cairo app or something, like, hey, you know what? Once upon a time, we got a 50% improvement in 30 days with plantar fasciosis. Then we added shockwave to our practice. It went to 85%. When you're measuring that stuff, you're not selling anything, you're solving people's problems. And they want that product faster. Like, why do people take Tylenol? They don't want to deal with pain. Why do people take ibuprofen? They don't want to deal with the inflammation. So give them something to help them solve their problems, and they'll love you for life.
I love what you just said, and then a couple things on that. Um, I recently interviewed Josh Satterley on the topic. It'll come out after this does, but I want to reference it and also break it down a little bit so it's on this particular episode too. But um, that I interviewed him about the maximizing your license idea, and it's so important. And then obviously Josh is someone that's built the clinic gym hybrid model, which I love, and you run that for your practice, and Ashley Jordan, our other coach for MCM, does. And so we're not saying here like rehab's amazing, training's amazing, fitness is amazing, exercise is so important. Yes, long term, we all know that. Um, but there are models out there that allow your patients to have that in your clinic without you having to particularly do it. So they're still getting that. And you're maximizing the license. And one of the things we talked about, Josh and I did on that, which I thought was a good way of looking at it, probably because I said it, but that's a different story. No, I'm just kidding. Was that okay? Let's say you have DNS and you've got McKenzie and you got SFMA, you've got your ART, you got all that stuff, right?
Alphabet
Um,
soup, right?
yeah, you got it, right? But the thing that's cool is that what we talked about with that episode with Josh was that um, there's even a maximizing of the license within each of those, right? So let's take Mackenzie. You could decide that you're only going to be doing some of the directional preferencing testing and some of the stuff like that of that Mackenzie protocol, and maybe run them through a couple things, but then have an extender, which don't let me forget. I want to talk about that. The first time I ever heard that was from Ben Fergus. I want to give him credit, and I do want to talk about it. but someone else is carrying out the actual repetitions of it, right? Or you're doing a DNS audit of the person, but then someone else is doing the actual DNS positions and things of that nature. You're doing the SFMA tiers and assessing it, but someone else is doing the correctives of it, right? So there, within each of those certifications that you may have, there is a maximizing your license component of it. And then there's a non-maximizing your license component of it potentially, right? And that's where I want to I want to make sure that people listening to this is like, we're not saying don't do these things and don't have these things, or patients don't need exercise or they don't need this. They need that stuff, but it can come from an extender in your practice. And can you, I know you know that a little bit more than I do, what Ben is referencing on that. Can you chat about that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think maybe to also put an analogy to this. So, I mean, I had my ACL reconstructed in 2018, and I handpicked my surgeon. That's, one of the blessings of being integrated in the healthcare model in the community. But Dr. Sherman was not the guy that gave me ADL advice. He didn't give me a home exercise prescription. He didn't do PT. He didn't shoot my images. He didn't do any of that stuff. He performed surgery. He's really good and gets paid best to perform surgery. So to Josh's tout, that idea of maximizing your license as DCs, we're really good at diagnosing musculoskeletal conditions, neuromusculoskeletal conditions, if we want to throw that in there. We're really great at treating those with our hands and with other tools that are at our fingertips. But, something we teach in the clinic gym hybrid model with Josh is, if you're that level of an expert, you should be able to train other people to be experts within those models. And whether that's DNS, the functional movement systems model, sometimes even soft tissue delegation and rehab exercises, we can find these people, as Ben Fergus calls them, the extenders, the extensions of our fingertips, to become much more clinically efficient. And quite honestly, one of the other big advantages of having a team, I was just talking to one of our MCM clients about this morning. When you have a team, patients are going to tell different people in your practice different things. Mm-hmm. If I'm a patient of yours, Kevin, I want you to succeed, because if you succeed, I succeed. However, I'm also terrified to tell you if you're failing sometimes. And that's, it's a little psychosocial model thing, right? But they're sure as hell to tell the people that are taking their money, well, yeah, I'm not feeling any better, or these exercises aren't working. And so adding another set of ears to empathetically listen to your patient population, I think really gives them a layer of comfort that most people seek after.
Yeah. Yeah. I think this is so true. Let's take a short break for one of our great sponsors, TrackStat. It is a new type of software plugin for your EHR that combines patient communication, marketing, automation, and statistics with patient and employee tracking. Built by chiropractors for chiropractors, it shows your team what to focus on each day. See patient visit habits, missing information, unpaid bills, insurance collection visit average, and more. Great visibility of data so you can focus on filling your office with your best patients. When you can see what your staff and patients are doing or not doing and take action accordingly, your profits naturally grow. Take TrackStat for a test drive in your office with our free trial. Not a techie? No problem. We can help. To get started on your free trial, visit trackstat.org and watch the demo. That is trackstat.org. Hey there, chiropractors. Are you tired of feeling like your dream practice is just out of reach? I know how frustrating it can be trying to balance patient care, paperwork, and billing while striving for that ideal practice you've always envisioned. But guess what? There's a solution that can make your dream a reality. Introducing Genesis Chiropractic Software, the key to unlocking your dream practice. Picture this: no more drowning in paperwork, no more scheduling headaches, and no more billing nightmares. With Genesis, you'll have everything you need to streamline your practice and focus on what truly matters, providing exceptional care to your patients. Imagine a practice where every patient interaction is seamless, every appointment is perfectly scheduled, and every billing process is smooth as silk. That's the power of Genesis. Ready to turn your dream practice into a reality? Schedule your consultation with Genesis today and take the first step towards practice success. Don't let the challenges of running a practice hold you back. With Genesis, your dream practice is within reach. Visit www.genesischiropracticsoftware.com/MCM to get started. Trust me, you won't regret it. Genesis Chiropractic Software, because every practice owner deserves to achieve their dreams. I think that's one of the things that's been cool to work with the chiropractors we have been working with. And I know you've had a couple visit your office lately, which is awesome. But we're trying to find that model of care, and I think we found at MCM where whether you're in network with insurances or you're cash, and you want to provide an evidence-based model that does include a multimodal approach, that there is a business model for you to grow and to get paid what you're worth, but then also that works for the patient, right? And a question that I kind of been chewing on a lot, and I don't know what the answer is, but we throw around the term patient centered a lot in the evidence based crowd, and I love it, right? And we always bash the other side of the profession for being doctor centered. But a question I just kind of been pondering a lot, and I don't have the answer, but it's just something I've been chewing on is, is it being patient centered if you as the doctor business owner can't figure out a business model that provides great results for the patient at a reasonable cost to them, right? And I'm not saying that in-network insurance is a reasonable reimbursement for chiropractors. I'm not going to go down the insurance model, but can they find good results in your practice at a reasonable cost to them, that and you're still running a business that's thriving really well? And I know a lot of chiropractors that have done that. We work with them. I've known some that are in our mastermind. And that's what we're trying to get our chiropractors to do, is find that beautiful spot where a very healthy percentage of their potential patients come in and say to themselves, yeah, I can manage that financially, and I'm also getting great results.
Yeah, I think the idea of reaching more people, right? Like if you're spending more and more time, you're reaching less and less people. And unless you're a level 5 leader that's also developing other leaders to go out and have satellite facilities that are doing the exact same thing, your law of multiplicity is going to be very, very tiny, meaning your common denominator is also going to be small. You're not going to be able to change the healthcare in your community. That's one of our clinical mission statements.
Mhm.
And I don't know, changing the lives of a small subset of people in a meaningful way, that does give you some wind in your philanthropic sails.
Mhm.
But what if you could multiply that by 2 or 3 or 4, maybe not 100, but just ripple that through your community a little bit more. And quite honestly, like things that we're doing through MCM and what MPI does, inspiring other clinicians to do the same, I think is so elegant. They want our profession to succeed. They want to do it through an evidence informed lens, but they want to see that medium volume of people coming through their doors so they can make sure that the impact's actually lasting.
Yeah, absolutely. And to your point, you mentioned level 5 leadership. Recently, the episode with Dr. Chris Chippendale, we talked about optimism versus cynicism, and it was really good. And we talked about some of the cynicism that is in our side of the profession, evidence based, in the belief that delegating rehab is bad or not good for the patient. I think is a cynical viewpoint. A little, I think it's a little fixed mindset versus growth mindset.
It's
And
borderline a fallacy, to be honest with you.
yes, exactly. It's true. Um, because what it does do, like what it does take, I should say, is it does take a level of leadership to be able to lead a team and train a team on how to deliver care um, within their scope at a very effective level. And I think sometimes maybe some people have a little bit of cynicism around the ability to do that. It's like, oh, I'm never going to be able to train someone that's going to be able to do it, or I'm going to train them, they're going to leave me. You said something that it was inside. I'll never forget exactly where I was sitting and where it was, but it was our St. Augustine mastermind. and you gave a each one teach one on preceptors, and you were talking about your preceptor program, and you said, I know you didn't come up with it, you stole it from someone else, like that probably stole it from
As
someone
always.
else, but it was the concern about training a team member and then leaving you. And you said something to the back, it's like, I'd rather train a team member really good and then leave me, or not train them well and then them stay with me. And that just really resonated with me.
I always said that this morning again to one of our clients. And yeah, I think there's a big fear around that is they're going to steal my intellectual property and they're
Hmm.
going to do this. So like, well, guess what? If they're doing that, then congratulations, you just multiplied your model. Like
Yeah.
you scaled without even know you were scaling. uh, I really firmly believe. I mean, one of my interns practices here in this town with, I mean, 2 miles from my practice. We didn't have a spot on the team for him. He's a great doc. He's really empathetic. He has that evidence informed lens. But you know what? I'm so happy when we have a patient that needs in on a Friday that we can't get in. I can send them down the road to
Hmm.
Paul, and I know they're going to get fantastic care. Starbucks did never intended to have just one, right? So I don't think that we need to have, again, thousands of practices under our one cloak. But to speak to those levels of leadership, I think, many of us get to that level 3 and maybe level 4 leader when you're running a team.
Hmm.
When you want to get to that economy of scale of like a Ray Tuck, you really have
Hmm.
to go to that fifth level of leadership, because you can't run 11 clinics and be in the trenches with them.
Hmm.
We've had so many influences, whether they're in our mastermind, in our MCM group, or people that we've brought in to speak on behalf of that really truly show that pinnacle level of leadership. It's a long haul to get there, just like we entered our conversation today. Like, you don't get that overnight. You don't have the 5,000 square foot practice with the clinic gym right out of the gates. You might have to start off in a small room. You might have to, go into a corporate environment where you're learning that clinical case management. But I think it resonates again to just say those steps, that cynicism, the fallacy of belief that we can't delegate. One of my favorite quotes, I say it probably weekly: before it's your favorite place, it's a place you've never been. You have no
Hmm.
clue, if you've never delegated rehab out, how rewarding it can actually be to teach somebody to be great at it.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I just want to touch on one last topic, and that's the thought of burnout, right? I think I've been thinking about a lot about this because I've been practicing for 19 years, and I've
Dang,
done the
man.
burnout. I've done the burnout thing. I've faced it head on before, but what I've kind of thought about, whether it's my own personal life or uh, being fortunate enough to work with chiropractors, is that I feel like a chiropractor does really well when they are working hard, but they see the progress they're making. And the progress is, yeah, financially, they feel good about their progress. They're feeling good about, I'm contributing to retirement. I'm on pace. I'm 35 years old and I'm on pace. I'm doing good. Um, and you can work hard when you feel like you're making progress. And there's other aspects of progress other than money, and that's definitely something that you have to be honest with yourself about, right? Like for me, I couldn't imagine talking to a patient for 60 minutes,
Right with you.
all the time. I love my 10 to 15-minute conversations and getting them to one of the extenders to do shockwave or rehab or whatever. But like, so for me, I get a lot of social engagement and I love it in that time frame. So there's a lot more to the burnout. But my concern is, and I see it, because it's one thing to, and I've said this before on a podcast. I'm not going to make it my slogan, but it's cool when you're broke when you're 28 and you're doing what you love, right? Like
Yes.
we've all been there. It's not as
I
cool when,
I wanted to be a professional cyclist, and they made about $12,000 a year at
yeah.
that point in my career. So yes.
Yeah, it's cool to be 28 and broke. Even the chicks don't mind it. But when you're 38 and broke, it's not as cool. And you got family and you got kids and you got things you want to do and you want to make that progress. And that's where I get chiropractors coming to me where they're not seeing that progress and they're getting burned out because of that.
And so I think it's just so important if you're starting out early on, or you're at that point where you're facing burnout because of it, to recognize that it doesn't have to be that way. There are really good evidence-informed models of care that does offer um, a multimodal approach and is congruent with your level of care and your standard of care. But that can also be financially rewarding for you so that you can feel like you're making progress, and that your family feels like you're making progress, and that your team members, you can afford and you can pay them well, right? And you can grow and you can see that progress you're making. And that's where I think burnout is can be avoided. There's other things in life that can happen, and I'm not an expert. We do have an expert coming to our Chicago mastermind, Dr. Manuel Estruck, and he's going to be talking about that, because our mastermind's got a lot of high achievers pushing the envelope, but how do we do that without burnout? And that's what he's going to talk about more of. But just in my own experience of working with chiropractors in my own personal life or professional life, that's my thought on the burnout, and that's my concern for the 36-minute DC that feels like they have to do everything. I don't know what this looks like for that doctor 15 years down the road, because it's such a newer thing, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's a newer concept that I don't know what it looks like when you're my age at 44 doing everything, if you can't get out of that. And that's my concern for this sub sect of the chiropractic model here.
Yeah, I agree. And, within the NPI model, I don't think anybody says it better than Corey Campbell. Their mantra, grit, grace, and gratitude, is also really important to avoid burnout,
Mhm.
because it's not all going to be kitty cats and rainbows every single day of practice. I mean, that grit
Mhm.
is so important. And you have to give yourself grace to allow yourself that amount of time to take the steps to success versus the
Mhm.
elevator. And damn it, be freaking grateful for it every step of the way.
Yeah.
I've said recently, I don't necessarily owe this profession anything, but it has allowed me a lifestyle and a purpose to deliver something I think is meaningful. So maybe, if I say it a different way, maybe I do owe the profession quite a bit. I mean, it's a gateway to have this incredible opportunity to grow a team within my community. I mean, I won't dive into the weeds on this, but I went through some tough times like a lot of people have in the last 4 years, and my team was one of the main reasons I portaged through that. Because I wrote a big long thing on a FTCA, and it was basically like, "Fuck it, I'm done." And my team was the people that brought me through it. My family, my team,
Mhm. Yeah.
you, Kevin. I mean, we've got good people surrounding us, so we're so grateful for that.
Yeah, and no matter who you are, I mean, I've been through it. I've talked about my 2015 on the podcast before. Um, anybody that's successful, or you think is like, they have their own ups and downs for sure. But I want to give kudos to you, because you're at the ripe old age of 40. Is it 41 now, or 40?
40 wonderful.
40 wonderful. But now, like, how many hours a week are you treating patients now?
17 and a half.
Perfect. And then it's given you the freedom to where you've got a business that is self-managing. You provide the leadership, and then it gives you the freedom to spend time with your family. You're able to coach for MCM. You're able to go to the mastermind and really help me out there. I couldn't do without you. You're able to teach with Josh a little bit and some SFMA stuff, and so that kind of fills your bucket to where that's the other part of that burnout, is there might be some things that are ancillary aspects of your professional life that can help fill your bucket to stave off the burnout. And if you can't find that freedom by the time you get to 40 wonderful, you start to get a little enclosed, right? Like, you feel like a little squeezed, and like, where am I going with all this? But if you do it right, you build something that's bigger than yourself. You will have that freedom. It won't happen at 31, most likely,
Yeah.
but maybe at 41, and definitely by 51 if you do this right.
Yeah. What was Mark King's earmark in his podcast? It's like he finally felt like he really had his feet underneath him when he was 45. I think that was about
Yeah,
right.
yeah, exactly.
And so to hear again another Mount Rushmore chiropractor say that, it just puts proof in the pudding that there are no shortcuts to success. I think inarguably, if anyone in our profession that was in an evidence-informed model went and shadowed Mark and Donna's practice in Mount Lookout, Ohio, they would be blown away. But it's kind of like, when the 16-year-old gets the Mercedes for their first car, the likelihood of you having Mercedes practice out of the gates is pretty low.
Yeah.
But, we've been fortunate. You mentioned one of our shadows. So we had 2 MCM members that have shadowed our clinic in the last 2 weeks, and they've been in practice. One of them, one's a couple. They've been in practice for 8 years up in Western Wisconsin. And then another one is just, here a few months into practice. And everybody has their own lens that they look through. Another quote I love is when you can't see the entire picture when you're stuck inside the frame. And so occasionally getting out of your comfort zone and going to shadow and learn with clinics. And I say learn with, I learned plenty with Brian Kellen last week, and then Luke yesterday. We learned together, and I highly encourage everybody to go out and shadow practices, big, small, in the middle, it doesn't matter. People that you respect, and make sure that you're making some clinical choices for your patients, for your team, and for yourself moving forward.
That's love it. It's been a cool trend also with our mastermind. Now that we took it out of Florida, we have members that practice some, near Nashville, and I know a couple people. You went to Jason Holmes, and I think Andy went to Anthony Hussein's, and I think when we got Chicago next, a couple of our members are in that area. People are going to shadow their clinics, and so you can definitely get outside of your 4 walls and learn from other practices.
I think we're becoming roadies, Kevin.
Yes, exactly. It's fun. It's fun.
It is fun.
Well, Curt, I appreciate your willingness to come up with this idea of helping me navigate the waters of this conversation, because I don't want it to attend like we were bashing anybody or anything. I just wanted to put out kind of a comprehensive audio here. I was thinking about writing a lengthy blog, but finding the time to sit down and write like I used to is trickier with a 2 and a 4-year-old. So thanks for helping me navigate the waters of this, because I think it's important. And I just want the chiropractor to have all the angles so that they can make an informed decision. And if they make the informed decision that works for them and it's not along these lines that we talk about, that's fine. But at least I think hearing this, no matter where you stand on your thoughts on it, is good to make an informed decision. Because if you don't, it's hard to make great decisions when you have some holes in your knowledge base.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more.
Awesome, man. Well, we'll have to do this again. This was nice.
Yeah, it was fun. I think so too.
All right. Well, you have a great rest of the weekend.
Yeah, you do the same. Chase that 2 and 4-year-old around.
I hope you enjoyed this week's episode. And if you want to make the shift from busy, broke, and broken to time-free and cash confident, or you just want to continue with the exponential growth, check us out at modernchiropracticmarketing.com. Look at the MCM Mastery tab, watch the short video on there, and check out what we are doing now for evidence-informed chiropractors. We are equal parts coaching and marketing done for you. Yes, you shoot some videos, we help you with campaign strategies and ideas and really become a thought leader in your community. You shoot those videos, you send them to us, we produce, edit, and brand them to you. Then we distribute them through all of your channels. We also take them and we turn it into one good blog per month. And every other month, we have Darcy Sullivan producing a robust blog with a topic that you pick from her database to help with your SEO. So we essentially become your content marketing agency to make sure your practice is always having ethical, elegant content marketing to help grow your practice. On the coaching side, we also help you with everything from marketing ideas to business, communications, finances, anything practice growth, and really try to help prevent you from being stuck on that island. And we hold you accountable. We have a great group of doctors that are just doing amazing things, and we look forward to help you out to take that next step in your practice. So again, check us out at modernchiropracticmarketing.com and learn more.